I flew on Copa Airlines. This 6-hour flight on a 737-800 took me from Montreal, Canada to Panama City, Panama. Copa Airlines is the flag carrier of Panama and operates a 100-strong fleet of only Boeing 737s. They've used Panama's geographic location in Central America quite strategically to turn Panama City into a huge connecting hub between North and South America. As part of that strategy, Copa Airlines serves 2 destinations in Canada, those being, naturally, Toronto and Montreal. This makes for a pretty easy way to visit Panama, at least for Eastern Canadians. So, when my friend Mark proposed a trip there in January this year, well, I was down to go visit a part of the world that I'd never been to before, and also get away from the cold for a bit. I opted to take the flight out of Montreal, which totally makes sense to fly 4 hours east from Calgary to go 6 hours south. In fairness, until Copa starts serving Vancouver or something, this is the easiest way to get to Panama without going through the US. Montreal's YUL Airport is one of those airports that seems to have reached capacity years ago, and this lineup for Air Transat looked pretty horrendous. Meanwhile, next to that mess, Copa Airlines has a smaller check-in area that's off to the side with a much more reasonable wait. It was easy enough to check in online though, and I was only traveling with a carry-on anyway. YUL has a central security area that's used for both international and domestic flights, which was just as busy. The 2 areas are divided though, and you have to scan a boarding pass to access the international bit, which immediately is much nicer. We'd be leaving from one of the gates at the very end of the international section in this newer extension that opened in 2016. This whole area is like night and day compared to the domestic portion of the airport, which could badly use the same treatment. Our 737 for today, unfortunately not parked in a great spot, was an 11-year-old Boeing 737-800, delivered to Copa in November 2012 and registered as Hotel Papa 1828 Charlie Mike Papa. Normally, Copa Airlines uses their 737 MAX 9s on this route, however this was filmed in January when many of those weren't flying. And indeed, many of Copa's were not, as you'll see later on when we get to Panama City. Now, if Copa's livery looks similar to that of a particularly large American airline, that's not a coincidence. Back in 1998, Continental Airlines acquired a 49% stake in Copa, which led to this very similar looking branding. That investment was also what allowed the airline to experience such rapid growth throughout the early 2000s. Continental eventually exited that partnership in 2008, and obviously merged with United, so I do wonder why Copa has stuck with this look for so long after that ended. However, Copa does have a lot of special liveries, and easily my favorite of those is their 75th anniversary retro livery, which I saw last year also here in Montreal. Copa's Montreal flights come in the previous evening and overnight here before going back to Panama, so boarding started mostly on time at around 6:30 a.m. Let's go see what 6 hours on Copa Airlines is like. My seat for the next little while would be 22F, just behind the wing. Now, Copa says that their economy class has 31 inches of pitch, which is usually fine for me. However, these seats are a bit thicker, which would normally be good, except that means the legroom is not the best at all for someone of my height. Typically, I would have grabbed an extra legroom seat, but by the time I booked this, all of those were already taken. Thinking the normal seats would be fine, I kinda gambled and lost this time around, and would just have to make do with this, and also get up and move a lot. The wing view is pretty nice from here though, although you'd be forgiven for mistaking this for a United plane. I will give Copa credit, these seats do look very nice, and the fact that there's actual built-in entertainment is a bonus. Plus, Boeing Sky Interior is always nice to look at, and does wonders when you travel with only carry-ons.
Good morning, dear passengers. The flight taxi captain speaking. On behalf of Copa and Praglowski, welcome to flight 44, destination Panama City connections. Flight number will be 5 hours and 45 minutes. Weather conditions after departure are good, however, remember to continue to the fasten at all times for safety and comfort. Once again, thank you for choosing Copa to update the flight.
We were then told we'd be delayed by about half an hour due to a delay in getting fuel. In the meantime, Copa's safety video was played for us.
Safety procedures of this aircraft during the journey along the
We eventually pushed back from the gate, a bit behind schedule, and here's the departure from Montreal off of runway 06 right. Today's flight would take us almost directly south from Montreal, passing over the northeastern United States, and then across the Bahamas, Cuba, and the Caribbean Sea before arriving into Panama City. In each economy seat, Copa has a standard tray table which slides, but didn't quite fit over my knees. In this quite roomy seat back pocket was an air sickness bag, Copa's Inflight magazine, which had plenty of reading material, as well as some information about the airline and its impressive route network through Panama City. It also had this bit about their Dreams business class seat, which is a lie-flat seat only found on their 737 MAX 9s. Copa is one of the few airlines to have lie-flats on a 737, so even though it was out of my budget, this time it would have been cool to see as I walked by. Lastly, there's also the safety card for their larger 737s. Most, but not all, of Copa's 737-800s have these in-flight entertainment screens at every seat. These ones are pretty new and responsive, and they had a decent selection of movies on board. There weren't quite as many TV shows, but they did have some music from Panama. There was also a moving map, albeit in the older style, with just a couple different views updating as we went. Lastly, there was a tab for connecting gate information, and also a place to give some feedback. The crew also gave out complimentary earbuds to anybody that wanted some. It's also worth mentioning that there's a USB port at the bottom of the screen for charging devices. For some reason, the seatbelt sign stayed on for the entire flight, and it seemed to be treated by the cabin crew as more of a suggestion. It wasn't until we were near the coast of the Carolinas that the crew started the onboard service. It was also right around then that there was a break in the clouds, giving us a brief glimpse of North Carolina down below, as well as the city of New Bern. Now, it turns out that Copa actually serves a proper breakfast on these long morning flights, and we had the option of a banana oatmeal cake or an English muffin. I went for the latter, which came with a small side bowl of fruit, as well as the actual sandwich, some hash browns, and a slice of ham. Those hash browns were very tasty, and the fruit was pretty fresh as well. The actual English muffin was very good too, nice and warm, and definitely hit the spot. The meal service was followed up by a drink service as well, and I just had some water in this recyclable cup. I will say the trays themselves are a really nice quality too, and the utensils, although plastic, are durable enough to actually be reusable. Around that point, we left North America behind somewhere near Wilmington and continued south over open water. Now, one thing about the service is that it took an hour between the crew finishing the service and coming back to collect the trays, so everyone was left holding theirs for quite a long time. These were eventually cleared somewhere over the Bahamas, and I took that opportunity for some much-needed standing-up time. This 737-800 seated 160 passengers in 2 different cabins. Up front was Copa's business class cabin, which has a fairly standard 4 rows of recliner-style seats in a 2-2 layout. Behind that is a solid bulkhead with 4 rows of premium seats, with 24 of those total. These have a bit of extra legroom with 34 inches of pitch, but we're also fully occupied already. The rest of the cabin is standard economy, with 120 economy class seats in the usual 3-3 layout. This lavatory in the very back was a typical slimline 737-1, with not a lot of space, but did the job. After that point, my seat neighbors very generously offered to let me have some time in the aisle seat, which I happily accepted. The cabin crew also gave out customs forms for Panama around then too. I was able to get some sleep in the aisle seat for the last little bit of the flight, and later switched back to the window for the arrival. With that, we were starting our descent, and the Caribbean coast of Panama just became visible through the clouds. We got some other great views of the dense forest down below as we descended further, and here's the arrival into Panama City's Tocumen International Airport, making a very interesting landing onto runway 03 right. So that was Copa Airlines from Montreal to Panama City. From a comfort standpoint, well, I did not enjoy this flight all that much. That sort of legroom is barely manageable for me for 3 or 4 hours tops, so 6 was really pushing it. Even though that put a bit of a damper on this flight for me, I don't want to dwell on it too much, because the thing is, by almost every other metric, Copa has a solid onboard offering. Getting a complimentary meal in economy class on a 737 is a rare occurrence, and it was genuinely tasty. Seeing that, plus their built-in IFE, and all of the connections that they offer through Panama City, makes it pretty clear why they've been so successful over the years. I think at some point in the future, it might be worth trying out their Dreams business class to see how it compares, but I think I will be steering clear of their standard economy seats. Thanks for watching this trip report with Copa, and I will see you next time for some interesting domestic aviation action here in Panama.